Hey, welcome to another show of your go-to show for health and wellness.
Indeed,
We're here.
today
Yeah.
we are going to follow up on a topic that we sort of brushed upon last time,
Yep.
and that is the place that personal responsibility has as far as health and wellness go.
Big time. Yeah. In fact, a lot of people think, "Oh, it's up to my doctor or my whatever health practitioner, alternative health practitioner to fix me or to help me." Yes, they're going to help me, but you are in charge of your results. You are in charge of your health. So personal responsibility. What do you want to start off talking about?
So I think before we delve into this topic, I want to start by addressing kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to the topic of personal responsibility, and that is the cultural sort of landscape that all of us have grown up in, where there's this notion that there are things that are good and bad, and where when we make mistakes, there's a lot of guilt and shaming that happens as a result of that.
Yep.
And so I think before we even embark on this journey of personal responsibility, it's super important to tap into a place inside of ourselves where we can experience and find unconditional love. And a lot of times, actually, I would argue most of the time, it's really important and helpful to have somebody that walks through that process with you to support you. Because a lot of times, we don't know how to love ourselves. I mean, that's part of the deep root issue of the thing. So when we can be with somebody who can give us that unconditional love and that supportive environment, then this process of taking responsibility for ourselves and our lives feels safer, I think.
I would agree. When I took NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, we talk about being at cause. And it's another way of talking about personal responsibility. So sometimes when I'm working with clients, sometimes we'll just do the symptoms, but sometimes we go for cause. And one way is to be at cause, they call it. So be at cause, what does that mean? If I were to say I'm at cause for everything that happens in my life, so in this case we're talking about health issues. So if I'm the one that caused my health issue. Now I've broached that topic with some of my clients. Some of them are very open and, hey, that sounds great. And some take it as an affront, as a, wait a second. So I'm to blame. So it's my fault. I have fill in the blank illness, fill in the blank disease, whatever situation, whatever condition, that they caused it. So they say, hey, no, I don't want to be at cause. That's too scary.
Well, I think that's why having at the foundation unconditional love and compassion for ourselves, we actually begin to recognize that our mistakes are actually really valuable and really important parts of our experience.
Right.
And they are what allows us to grow and to become better, right? So like without our mistakes, we would be stagnant and stuck and never, like have transformative experiences,
Right.
So instead of, I think it's also beginning to change our relationship with mistakes, right? Both within
Right.
ourselves and within other people.
Right.
So we have the foundation of unconditional love and compassion, and then we have the recognition that mistakes are actually good things,
Right.
right? And then there's also the thing that we don't know better until we know better, right? So
Right.
a lot of times the first step in taking personal responsibility can be kind of painful. It's like taking a bitter pill because a lot of times there are things that we have done that are contributing to why we're out of balance in our bodies and in our lives, right? And so acknowledging our part in it can be painful and scary, but in my experience, it's actually the key to our freedom because we take our power back
Right.
and we move away from blame
Right.
to this thing that we're talking about, personal responsibility.
Well, and I think that's the key is that when I'm telling a client or introducing sometimes for the first time these ideas of, or the idea of being at cause, taking responsibility, sometimes a client, and maybe you at home, because I think we all do this, sometimes we might feel like we're the victim. like, oh, everything's happening to me.
Right.
And maybe to some extent we could argue that it is. But what they're not seeing is that if I'm saying, hey, you caused this, or you're responsible for this, or you're at cause, the flip side, or what I'm really saying is, psst, you have the ability to change
Right.
it.
You
That's
have
what they're
power.
not getting. Yeah, they're saying, I'm stuck at victimhood. Why is everyone pointing fingers at me? As you did it, you did it, you did it. What we're saying is you have the ability to change it. Yes, with other people's help, whether it's Western medicine or alternative, whatever, you have the ability to make those changes. So start seeing it that way. And we're all guilty of that, of sort of comforting ourselves with that blanket of victimhood, when in fact, step out and be scary. Step out and look at the mistakes as things that we've learned, as maybe you've been through it, you've been through the dark forest, you've learned these things. Now you can creatively solve them when you take responsibility. Quickly, one thing I learned is that I've looked at my heart issues that I was born with, that, well, what if I caused those?
So this is a great leeway or entrance to the point that I really wanted to make, and
Yep.
that is that, so I think it's really essential to recognize that there are things that happen to us in our lives, right? Like being born with a heart defect.
Right.
People who have experienced horrible abuse as children, those things are not our fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
We did not cause them or choose them. And yet still, how we decide to show up in our lives and in the world as a result of
Right.
those experiences, that is our responsibility, right? So that is the difference between victimhood, right,
Yep.
and being empowered, is recognizing that, yes, there are horrible, like, inequalities and injustices that exist in our world. Absolutely.
Yep.
And it's really important to acknowledge those and recognize those. And then to say, oh, this has really impacted me. This has really wounded me.
Yeah.
Right? And to be able to talk about that, and then to be able to say, I'm going to show up in my life still
Yep.
today, and I'm going to show up in a way that actually makes myself feel better and makes other people feel better.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so, for example, like if somebody yells horrible insults at you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not responsible for that, right? Like you,
Right.
I mean, as long as you didn't instigate it, right? But still,
Presuming you did not instigate
presuming
it,
you didn't
yeah.
instigate it, somebody says something horribly painful and outrageous to you, right? So at that point, when you haven't done anything, you aren't responsible for that, right? However, how you choose to respond in that moment is 100% your responsibility. And what happens for most of us is that it's so uncomfortable, and what has been said to us has triggered a deep wounding inside that we can't sit with and tolerate, right? So what we
Right.
do is we just throw back on them that same type of insulting, anger, and that only perpetuates this never-ending cycle,
Right.
right? And then at that point, both participants are equally responsible.
Yeah, exactly, because you've participated in it. I mean, it's the adage of what someone does or says is their stuff. How I choose to respond to it is mine.
Right.
So if someone were to say, "Jonathan, you're fat," whoa, that has no reaction to me. I've never considered myself to be overweight. I don't feel that I get like I am. That's not a trigger for me. So if someone were to point their finger and say that I am that, I don't even have an inclination to respond back in any way. Now, if they were to point their finger to yell at me and say something that I was maybe dealing with, or that I wasn't personally clear with, then maybe I do respond back and I do participate in this interaction, and we become equals or negative equals maybe is that where I'm a part of that. So I'm not taking responsibility for my own triggers. I'm not taking a responsibility in the global thing that we're talking about on my health issue, if that's what we're talking about. Yeah. Where whatever the world deals you, that's where you're at. That's the reality, so to speak. And how you choose to respond to that, that's where the magic happens. That's where your mistakes become creativity, become magic, become something that people can look up to.
And there are so many extraordinary examples of that through history,
Yes.
right? People who responded to hatred with love,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Martin Luther King comes to my
Yep.
mind right away,
Yep.
and so many others, I mean, people who have, despite all of the hardships and, crap, quite frankly, that,
Right.
others around them in the world has dealt them, have said, well, this is what I have to work with. And they've dug in and they've done the work. And
Right.
it's hard, and we need support in that. Absolutely. I don't think we can do it alone.
Right.
But it is the first step, I believe, into starting to walk a path of wellness and health. And we were talking about how health is not only that your all your blood lab levels are
Right.
within range. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the type of health that
Right.
I'm talking about. I mean, health impacts and interacts with every aspect of our lives, right?
Yep.
So it starts first, like with our own bodies,
Right.
but then it goes outwards in our relationships, in our communities, in our country, in the world, and right now there's just so much toxicity and so much like pushing people's buttons and triggers and like it's just this knee-jerk response that when that happens to us we do it back. So
Right.
we can't have a conversation, right? We
Right.
can't even have a conversation with one another at this point.
Right. I mean, and that is, we were talking earlier about the idea of like political correctness type things. And to me, the idea of political correctness is trying to be more conscious. So I think it starts off with a good idea of, hey, I'm going to be more mindful of, usually when I think of politically correct, I think of like labels. What I'm going to call this segment or that segment of the population. It is other things, but it's often that as well, where I'm going to label this group this, or I'm going to be more mindful of their feelings, of their position, and maybe choose to call them something else. Now, that's fine. I think the intention is great to be more conscious. Maybe do it in all aspects. The trick is kind of like the what someone does is their stuff, how I choose to respond to it is my thing. We are doing a lot of poking and a lot of criticizing. It could be politically correct or not. Like, oh, so-and-so said this or did this, and look at them. It's the cast the first stone thing. When in fact, it's a great thing to be mindful, but the responding with love, in that's the trick, is maybe stop the judgment on whether someone was saying the right thing or doing the right thing, and you just do and say the right thing
Right.
for you the best you can. And then if someone does something that is not quite the right way that you think it should be, or if it's especially if it's directed at you, what if you responded in non-judgment? And
Right.
like,
Well, I think that the judgment and the criticism that we have for one another is a direct reflection of that judgment and criticism that we have for
Yes.
ourselves, right? So it's like you were saying, you have never been fat. So if somebody said, Jonathan, you're fat, it would just bounce off of you,
yep,
right? But
it
like,
triggers nothing.
exactly. So the thing is though that oh crap, I lost my train of thought, man.
That's fine. That's why we just do these things. We can lose our train of thought.
So, but what I did want to touch on too is that this is a very gentle process that I am talking about, and so I really emphasize with everybody that I work with that it's about progress and not perfection. And so when we talk about taking personal responsibility for our health, there are small things that we can begin implementing over time, and the more we do them consistently, the more that our brain rewires itself and the more that it becomes a healthy habit that we then are able to implement every day. So like with most people, I start them off with making sure that they're hydrated. Most people are dehydrated. Dehydration leads to impairment all over your system and body. So it's about waking up every day and just asking yourself, what is the thing I can do today to like be loving to myself? What is the thing I can do today to nourish and take care of my body? You know, and maybe today it's just one thing.
Right. And going back to the love thing as well, like, and love yourself. Now, when I talked about being at cause, I did actually think about, well, what if I caused my health issue, my congenital, meaning born with heart issue? What if I caused that? Whether or not, and I've done this with clients as well, just some clients, but if you just go down that road for a second. Let's say I chose to be born with heart issues. Now, whether or not it's true doesn't matter, like religious belief, whatever, none of that matters at all. It's like an intellectual exercise. If I were to have chosen it, why might I have chosen this body with those issues? What could I get out of it? Whether or not it's true, and then move through that.
And actually, in some ways, by taking responsibility and saying, yeah, I was the one who caused it, you have 100% of the power now to change something about
and maybe I change it. Yay, I changed it. I'm healthier. I'm whatever. And maybe sometimes I don't to whatever degree I wanted to. I can learn from it saying, hey, what did I learn from it? How did I grow from it? What else is behind my decision to be born with a heart issue? So there's certain things I'm not going to be able to do.
Right.
Well, what can I do?
Exactly.
And so that's the way I was thinking, as far as if I'm taking control of it, if I'm taking ownership of it, if I'm saying that perhaps I caused it, what can I do and what am I learning from it? In fact, there's something that I labeled as New Age angst. This was when I went through the recent heart issue, or recent heart surgery, the open heart surgery, like as of this date, 2.5 years ago. One of the things that made it so difficult for me was the decision to have it done. Because most people in my life would go, of course, you were born with this thing. It's not your fault. It's a structural deal. Go in and have the surgery. Go into Western medicine, have the open heart surgery, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, clearly you should do that. Totally supportive. And then there was a small segment of my friends, the more woo-woo friends, that maybe not directly, but sort of indirectly, inferentially, they were saying things that would lead me to believe they thought I could fix it myself. And so when the doctors were saying, hey, it's getting worse and it's affecting your lung function and whatever, we think you should have surgery, I felt bad. I felt like I had failed. And to me, that's the New Age angst, that if I take cause for my life, if I say that I'm at cause for whatever, like in this case, health issues, and for my case, those health issues, then I failed if I didn't fix it myself. And so it was, I could have this surgery, or I could do something else and fix it. Maybe get my mind right or whatever, some woo-woo thing, and then make it go away. And I'm not even saying I don't believe that that's possible. And yet, you're not failing if you just choose something. I've helped people, especially after my own decision, move through choices like Western medicine and saying, hey, you don't, if you're more into woo-woo things and you're at cause and you're taking responsibility and things don't turn out well and maybe you have to have a certain procedure done, you don't fail.
Right. Absolutely.
It's not about failure, it's about learning, and it's about seeing that all choices are valid and all choices can be spiritual, all choices can be growth producing. And let me tell you, getting your chest cut open and your chest spread apart, there's spirituality to that. And that's many other discussions we can have about that. But so when you're when you're going to be bold enough to stand on the precipice and jump and saying, I'm at cause, and there are actions I can take, and one is water, and one we talked about, some other things, and some of the things you'll know that you can take, actions and you can take in your life to get your life back on track. You always win. It's always about love. And there's this magic that happens when the Joseph Campbell, when you enter your dark forest and you go on that health adventure. Whatever happens, you have a story to tell.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to hear. So.
Wow. I think I couldn't have said it better, man. That
So
was
there you
really
go.
amazing. I'd like to next time touch on the conversation we had about diagnoses.
Yeah, we should do
And
a whole show on
identities
diagnosis and labels and what
Yes.
that means. And there's a
And
whole
some of the pitfalls and dangers.
So check in next time. So what I guess the takeaway is your health plan is your responsibility.
And
it's
it
your
starts
plan.
with a foundation of unconditional love and compassion for
Absolutely.
yourself, right? So meeting
Yes.
yourself where you are at right now in this moment and just doing the next little thing that you can to make yourself feel better. So it's
I
just
love that.
and I always
Yep.
like to have people start with the things that are the easiest for
Yep.
them, and then that helps you build confidence
Yes.
because it's like, oh, sweet, like I can do it, and it's like we're born with this negativity bias in our brain, right? It's a
Fortunately,
part of
society
our-
doesn't strengthen it at all.
Right. And so when we actually do these things, these little things,
Yeah.
we're slowly over time beginning to reprogram that.
Yes.
And the more that we do that, the more we rise up out of that and we see the potential for healing, for growth, for learning in all of our experiences,
Yep.
positive or negative.
I love that because when you take these little steps, it's the whole snowball effect, but it gradually seeps into the deepest core of who you are, into your cells, into your genes, and you can make those amazing health changes. But yeah, one thing at a time.
And if one
Love
day
yourself, yeah.
you don't, do the thing that you wanted to do, that you thought you should do, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like maybe one day you just need to sit on the couch and, eat a Hostess cupcake. Because it brings some comfort or reminder of
We learned something about
healing, why we make an effort every day to do our best is so that we have this room there to just be, to enjoy our lives, right? So I always like to live by the 80-20 rule, 80% of the time I'm making my best effort to take care of myself. 20% of the time I'm enjoying my life.
I do about the same, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
to have that. It's a balance.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
all about balance.
All right.
All right.
There you go. Personal responsibility. You've learned some things, start implementing them, and love yourself, right?
Exactly.
Don't be the victim, love yourself. So we will see you next time. All right?
Alrighty.
We'll see you.
Bye.